Tonight on Monday Night Raw, we have The Big Show versus Randy Orton in an unsanctioned match. Yes, Randy Orton is in his second unsanctioned match of recent times on Monday Night Raw. Of course, the first one was against Christian a few weeks ago on the program, in which I must backtrack a little bit there. It wasn't a match. I don't think Christian has been cleared at all to compete on Monday Night Raw in a WWE ring or anything for that matter. So it was a bit of a schmaz finish sort of thing where Ric Flair comes in, low blows Christian, Randy Orton Punk kicks him in the head, and that's that. So Christian, this kind of kick-started the feud with The Big Show, right? The Big Show wasn't happy with Randy Orton Punk kicking Edge in the head and wasn't happy with Randy Orton Punk kicking Christian in the head, and it's led to this Big Show Randy Orton feud of two veterans, two old-timers. Big Show trying to teach Randy Orton a little bit of respect, and Randy Orton once again becoming the legend killer. Interesting that this match didn't take place last night at Extreme Rules. We've seen WWE take away a couple of matches rather, from the matches that were scheduled for Extreme Rules. Of course, we did have the bar fight between Jeff Hardy and Sheamus scheduled for Extreme Rules. That was taken away. The reason as to why that was taken away and the Big Show match was taken away, from what I've heard and what I've read online, purely because they felt that the show just was running too long. The irony being, though, that last night the horror show at Extreme Rules was one of the shorter pay-per-views in WWE history, in that it only ran about 2.5 hours. Usually, you have a pay-per-view run about 3 hours. When WWE was running crowds, it was running 4 or 5 hours, wasn't it? Or maybe even longer than that sometimes, because WWE had to get all of their matches in, and they had to fill all of their time on the network and get all their people that they had under contract in matches. So we were having pay-per-views that lasted 5 hours or something ridiculous, which was just too much to take. So maybe that was a positive last night. The irony, though, is that last night's Extreme Rules pay-per-view was a 2.5 hour show, but Monday night's episode of Raw is going to be 3 hours long. And I suppose we should touch on that also. Obviously, the reason they cut the matches from Extreme Rules last night was to make sure that the length of the show was shortened, but also was to hopefully get some ratings going on Raw and SmackDown. Raw last week drew 1.5 million viewers as an average. An average number for all 3 hours was 1.5 million viewers. It's staggering. It's absolutely staggering. I posted a tweet about this when we got the news last week about the amount of viewers watching Monday Night Raw. It's an all-time record low. Once again, it feels like every single week at this point is an all-time record low, not only for creative but also for the ratings. And maybe that's a little bit harsh for me to say that about the creative there, but because the shows recently have been better, the pacing has been better, but the 3 hours is just unbearable for anything, let alone pro wrestling, and in some cases bad pro wrestling. But 1.5 million viewers is just not good enough. Raw for a long time. This predates the last 5 years. Raw has been on a decline in terms of viewership ever since 1999-2000. But ever since like 5 years ago, I just went back 5 years, because some people will say, well, it's not right to compare it to the 90s. So okay, let's take a look at Raw the last 5 years. Year to date, without episode last week of Raw, year to date, pretty much Raw had been losing 200,000 viewers every year to date, roughly. Sometimes it was 300,000, sometimes it was 100,000, but roughly 200,000 subscribers. 200,000. Imagine they lost 200,000 subscribers to the network. Could you believe that? 200,000 viewers roughly every single year. That was roughly it. But the pandemic, of course, has sped things up. Instead of being 200,000 this year, Raw's lost, in comparison to last year, has lost about 1 million viewers. Now, I got a bit of flack on social media when I said that I don't think WWE should be using the pandemic as an excuse for that, and I stand by that statement. I got a lot of response from people saying, well, you've just proved that the pandemic has had something to do with it, rah, rah, rah. There's no doubt. I'm not saying that the pandemic isn't a factor here. Because this was the problem. People didn't read the whole post. I'm not saying that the pandemic is not responsible for the decline in television ratings, because that is it's a fact. You can't deny that. We post every single week when the ratings come out. We post the ratings on social media, but also we have a working graph which we update every single week that we have been doing ever since Raw had its premiere episode back in September of 2019, ever since Fox had their debut episode of SmackDown, ever since AEW had the debut episode of Dynamite. we have been jotting down the ratings every single week, and we have a graph. And if you look at around March time this year, in comparison to now, the ratings have taken a nosedive. Why? That's because of the pandemic. There's several reasons as to why. People just aren't interested in watching wrestling during a pandemic. They have other things to worry about. They're watching the news. They're watching press conferences. Some people can't afford cable, so a lot of people have been cutting the cable. So cable numbers are down, and cable numbers are down every year. That is true. But just to say that the pandemic is directly responsible for these tumbling ratings is not the case, because Raw and any WWE programming just loses viewers every single year. That's what WWE has been doing for the longest time. The pandemic, realistically, has just sped up this process. That's essentially what's happened here. Now, the pandemic has just sped up this entire process of Raw and SmackDown and whoever losing viewers by maybe about 3 years. This is where Raw would be in about 3 years' time if we hadn't had the pandemic. This was where Raw's numbers would be in probably about 2023. That's all it's done. It's just sped it up. It's just sped up the process. And to me, I don't see Raw changing or SmackDown changing it in any time soon. I just don't see that on the horizon, whereby they're going to gain all those viewers back, or they're going to improve their programming to get these viewers back, because they are so set in their ways and they have contracts with big corporations that the flexibility isn't there to change. But I don't think that at this point they even know how to change. The biggest example for Raw would be to remove that third hour, but that's never going to happen. Raw is not going to become a 2-hour show again for the longest time, because USA Network pays WWE very, very well to have that extra third hour. Why? Because 1.5 million viewers is a bad number for WWE for Monday Night Raw, but 1.5 million viewers in that third hour is probably better than the USA Network would have got anywhere else. So they pay WWE good money for it. WWE on their network is still probably the highest rated thing on their network. And that's a bad WWE rating. And ultimately, it's not going to be the USA Network's call. I think it's got to be WWE's call to say, look, we can't keep going like this. We've alienated our viewer base. Less and less people are watching the show. Yes, there are other factors in here. Yes, television ratings in general are down. Yes, more people stream things now and they watch things on demand. They watch them at their own time and pleasure. All of that is absolutely true. There are other factors. That is why WWE has been losing viewers every single year. But there are also other factors in addition to the other factors. Some people just aren't willing to admit that sometimes WWE is putting on, and more times often than not nowadays, WWE is putting on bad television. That Raw show, even if... Look, and I've been a fan of the Raw shows the last few weeks because I do think they've been good. But every single week for 3 hours, you cannot knock every segment out of the park. On a 2-hour show, if you've got one stinker segment, you go, it doesn't really affect the show that bad. If you've got a 3-hour show and you have one bad segment or a couple of bad segments, it turns you off because you go, there is 2 hours left of this. And do I really want to sit through this? And you get to through the first hour and you look at the watch and go, we're only an hour in, we've got 2 hours to go. That's the problem with Raw. That's the problem with Raw at the moment. And yes, maybe tonight we'll do a better number than last week. You would hope so, considering they've got a main event of 2 established talents that can go back and have so much history with WWE and have been proven to draw ratings in Randy Orton and The Big Show. I have no doubt that they'll have a great match, and I do think that they'll draw a higher number this week, because let's be honest, if they dip under 1.5 million viewers, then wow. WWE really has to have some serious conversations about what they're going to do, because Raw doing under 1.5 million viewers, close to 1.5 million viewers watched both NXT and AEW last week, and they are not the same viewership base at all. Maybe for NXT, but AEW has a way more of a younger audience than WWE. So again, I would hope the rating improves tonight, but if it does, it's just papering over the cracks, in my opinion, because it's fundamentally got a lot wrong with it. Monday Night Raw. It's bleeding viewers. It will continue to bleed viewers for the longest time. Tonight's show has nothing to do with that. There are way more deep-rooted problems that they need to change about that show. Now, in terms of The Big Show versus Randy Orton tonight, in terms of the match, what I will say is when Randy Orton challenged The Big Show last week, Big Show shouting "okay" is one of the most memeable, gifable and funniest videos I have seen in a long time. He was actually playing it to be serious, but he just shouts "okay," and honestly, it was ridiculous. It was funny though, so I'll give him that. I'll give him credit where credit is due for that one. It was funny. even though it wasn't meant to be funny. I do find humor also in the fact that tonight we've got an unsanctioned match, so WWE aren't willing to sanction what the Big Show and Randy Orton are going to do to each other. We don't want to be responsible. We don't want to be held liable for what the Big Show and Randy Orton could and probably will do to each other tonight on Monday Night Raw. So it's an unsanctioned match. The referee is only there to count a pinfall. He's not even really a representative of the WWE. Yet this is the same company that the night prior they were willing to sanction a match in which they have the way to win is to gouge your opponent's eye out, and Rey Mysterio has a fake eyeball rolling around like a game of marbles, and Seth Rollins throwing up like he's Darren Drozdov on Beyond the Mat. I mean, it was ridiculous. Don't get me started on the eye for an eye thing, but the idea that they're not willing to sanction a match between two guys just because Randy Orton's been kicking people again in the head recently, but they are willing to sanction a match in which someone's eye gets ripped out of their head. It's like, well, come on, where does the creative level out here? Where does the balance? So, and I'm sure we'll see more from Seth Rollins tonight on Raw. Maybe he'll come out and throw up again. Maybe that'll be his new gimmick. Every time he wins, he's just disgusted and starts throwing up. Maybe that's the way to do it. I don't know. But in terms of the match itself, I think Randy Orton, of course, is going to win this one. Big Show at this point isn't a full-time guy when it comes to working TV events. He comes back for a feud or a storyline, then disappears again. He's got a lot going on. I say in Hollywood, not so much Hollywood. Of course, he's got his Netflix show. At the moment, his Netflix kids show, The Big Show on Netflix, which has done well, I think, and they've renewed it for a second season. So they seem happy with that, and Big Show has been open that as his career winds down, which it should be. He's getting up there now. I mean, I don't want to see anyone, I don't want to wish anyone out of the ring as long as he feels healthy and well enough to do it. It's not for me to tell him what to do or anything like that. But his career obviously is winding down. He's got more matches in the rear view mirror than he does on the horizon, that's for sure. So Big Show only comes back in fits and spates now, and only comes in for, storylines, feuds, the occasional match, etc. And I think this is going to be the write-off of Big Show off WWE television for a while tonight. His whole thing has been about coming back for this feud with Randy Orton after Randy Orton took out Edge and Christian, and this is all about giving Randy Orton something to do before SummerSlam and trying to build up more momentum for Randy Orton right now into SummerSlam. So I think Randy Orton defeats the Big Show tonight. I think he kicks him in the head, and then we see the Big Show written off television. Randy Orton, in my opinion, also will be the new number one contender for the WWE Championship. I don't think that's going to be decided in this match tonight, but from what we've heard, that is the plan going forward. Some people speculated that we could have seen Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship in a WrestleMania rematch. That doesn't look to be happening purely because WWE, the SummerSlam is going to take place once again from the Performance Center, right? There was some optimism a few months ago that SummerSlam would take place in front of fans, maybe not in Boston, but maybe in Florida, in front of some paying people in attendance. That's not the case. Obviously, the situation in Florida is still very, very bad. The situation in America is still very, very bad. In my opinion, when it comes to American wrestling events or just American sporting events in general, having people in attendance is quite a way off, especially from a WWE point of view, whether it's people in stadiums or people in arenas. I just don't see that happening for a while. So SummerSlam was put into the Performance Center, and any big matches that they had that WWE were truly willing to invest on have also been put on the shelf. So we're not going to see, I don't think, Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam, purely because his appearance fee is so expensive, and WWE doesn't want to waste him for an event that isn't going to raise them a lot of money. Every time they run these WWE Performance Center shows, yes, they save money from the building rent and all that sort of stuff, but they don't make the money on the live event, whether it is the live attendance or the other factors that they have going on, the merchandise sales in the arenas, etc., etc. So Brock Lesnar coming in for an event like this just doesn't seem financially viable. So it doesn't look like we'll have Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. The plan initially was to have Edge versus Randy Orton at SummerSlam. Those plans initially for the greatest wrestling match ever, that match was scheduled to happen at SummerSlam. They moved it forward because Vince McMahon felt that the card for Backlash and the cards for the minor pay-per-views, the B shows, weren't doing well. They needed star power on Backlash. They needed momentum, so he moved it forward to Backlash. And then I think the original plan was to have Edge versus Orton 3 at SummerSlam as the sort of rubber match. Of course, those plans changed when Edge tore his tricep during the greatest wrestling match ever. So Edge is on the shelf now. So what do you do with not having a Drew McIntyre Brock Lesnar match and not having an Edge and Randy Orton match? You merge them together and you have Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship, and I think that's what we're going to see when it comes to that one. And to be honest, regardless of the issues that WWE has had with people getting injured, Brock not being able to come in, Edge being injured, etc., I think it's the match at SummerSlam that I'd like to see the most anyway. It's the one that makes the most sense for me anyway. You've got Drew McIntyre, who by definition as being the WWE champion is the top babyface on Monday Night Raw. He's fought off all comers so far. I think he's done a tremendous job given the circumstances as WWE champion. It's been difficult because he's had no crowds. He's had no real way to gauge how he's doing, but he's done very, very well in my opinion because on social media anyway, he's still got the will of the fans, and that hasn't been the case with people that have been crowned WWE champion in the last few years. When they tried to do this with Roman Reigns, they turned on him very quickly. When they tried to do this with Seth Rollins in 2019, they turned on him quickly because the booking was bad and some of the stuff outside the ring wasn't too great either. Seth Rollins is more of a heel than a babyface always for me, so it didn't work with him. They're trying it with Drew McIntyre now to get the machine behind him, and as far as I'm aware, if you look on social media, and we would have known better with the crowds, but I think they've done a better job with him, booking him. He's a likeable babyface. He's still got the will of the people, especially on social media, so he's the top babyface on Monday Night Raw. So at one of the biggest shows of the year, arguably the second biggest show of the year is SummerSlam behind WrestleMania, the biggest babyface on the brand should go against the biggest heel on the brand, and the biggest heel on the brand right now, of course, is Randy Orton. I've mentioned this a few times now, but I think Randy Orton overall is the MVP of WWE in 2020 right now. Nobody has been hotter since Randy Orton turned heel on Edge after the Royal Rumble earlier this year in January. Nobody. Now, if you want to segment it, I think the MVPs of the empty arena shows, when we first had the pandemic hit, I think that was Asuka. I thought her promos were great, her matches were great, she was entertaining with zero fans there. That's the reason she's the Raw Women's Champion right now. Now, if you want to fast forward a little bit and move to this next era of the pandemic era, this next chapter of when we have the Performance Center recruits in the crowd, I think the MVPs of those shows have been Sasha Banks and Bayley. The Women's Tag Team Champions have been appearing on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. They've been stealing the show a lot of the time, having great segments, great matches, super entertaining, and I don't want to see that duo end anytime soon. And Sasha Banks kind of won the Raw Women's Championship last night in a finish that I absolutely hated. We will see more of that tonight. I'm guessing that's a way to try and get people watching tonight's episode 2. But if you're going to look at it as an overall picture, one, there is no heel in WWE right now that is hotter than Randy Orton. I don't care about Bray Wyatt and The Fiend and all that. I think he is great, but I think nobody has been as compelling. Their promos have been as solid. Their work has been as great. Great matches, great storytelling, great promos, just a sinister and evil heel. Nobody right now is better than Randy Orton, and this is a guy that's 18 years into his WWE career. He continues just to smash it out the park and do tremendous work. And for the longest time when it came to Randy Orton as well, especially over the last, 5 or 6 years, because he's got so much respect. He's got so much respect from the WWE crowds, the WWE fans, on social media, and he's such a megastar that every time he comes to the ring and his music hits, we hear the I Hear Voices theme, he gets a big pop. And he gets a reaction. And some people in WWE for a while thought, well, as a heel, should he be getting that big babyface reaction? It was impossible for him to be a heel because he would always get cheered. But now, this year, Randy Orton and WWE have found the right formula. They've let him be this evil, psychotic, careless, remorseless, heartless heel once again. And ever since he turned on Edge after the Royal Rumble in January, he has been just on fire. No heel has been able to touch him, and he's just been that good. Think of the moments that Randy Orton has had this year. Whether it was turning on Edge after the Royal Rumble, whether it was getting Matt Hardy out of the WWE, those segments were great. Whether it was the WrestleMania Last Man Standing feud and match with Edge, and some people criticised that, I for one enjoyed it. Whether it was the greatest wrestling match ever. Was it the greatest wrestling match ever? No. But it's a big platform, and I thought they delivered a hell of a match. Was it worthy of the stipulation? No match ever was going to be worthy of that stipulation, but for what it was, and for how they did it, I thought it was a great match and a great spectacle. So Randy Orton so far, and then obviously you've got the Christian kick to the head, which was awesome. I really enjoyed that episode of Raw. And now you've got this feud with the Big Show, which is okay. But I think Randy Orton is he's on fire. So he's going to be facing likely Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam. There's a rumor he might beat Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship, hold it till WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble, and then begin feuding with Edge once he returns. That's still up in the air though and is yet to be confirmed. Now, what about Ric Flair? Let's touch on Ric Flair before we wrap this one up here. Ric Flair, for me, if you've watched any of the videos on the channel, you know my opinion on this. Ric Flair, in my opinion, should be nowhere near that WWE Performance Center right now. That has nothing to do with him as a performer. I love me some Ric Flair. Ric Flair is the greatest wrestler of all time and one of the greatest characters of all time. And even today, he's revered and is a great character. And if this was any other period of time, I would love to have Ric Flair on Monday Night Raw every single week because he's such a great addition to the show. He had a great backstage promo and segment with Big Show recently. I prefer him in this heel role, him not being just the iconic WWE Hall of Famer coming out, wooing, shaking people's hands. I like him as a heel role. I like him backing up Randy Orton. They're playing off the history of Evolution. That, for me, works. That is great. The problem is that we're in a pandemic still, especially in Florida, and you look at that WWE Performance Center, we've had close to, this was a couple of weeks ago now, but we've had close to 40 positive COVID-19 tests. Who knows how many more positive ones we've had since then. Now, I don't want to speculate on people if they have or haven't had or tested positive for COVID-19, but you've got people like Apollo Crews not being able to compete last night, so who knows what the situation is with that one at the moment. And we know what can happen with false negatives tests, and we know some of the issues with social distancing. Masks have only just been implemented to WWE, even though that was 4 months into a pandemic. They only started testing 4 months into a pandemic. And whilst we were getting all of these positive tests, Ric Flair was still in the WWE Performance Center. He is 71 years old. He has had numerous health issues over the last 5 years, on which he's nearly died on a couple of occasions. He has a heart problem because of alcoholism also in the past. He just should be nowhere near that performance center. He's high risk because of his age. He's high risk because of his health issues. He shouldn't be anywhere near there. And for people that will say, well, it's his choice. He's a grown man. If he wants to appear there, that's up to him. If he wants to put himself at risk, that's up to him. I get that, and I'm totally for them having their own decisions, but this shouldn't be a decision for Ric Flair to make. If you're WWE, you have to think that you're a publicly traded $1 billion company with shareholders, stockholders, that is on the New York Stock Exchange. You have a massive reputation to keep up, and you have PR to keep up. Ric Flair getting sick and having health problems because of your dangerous work environment or because of contracting COVID-19 at your WWE Performance Center, and something, heaven forbid this doesn't happen, but something happens to him, that doesn't look good on WWE. If their response when something happens to Ric Flair is, well, it's his own choice, he's free to make his own decisions, and we do testing, that isn't going to fly with a lot of people, because people will say, why did you even have him there in the first place? Make the decision, Rick. We really would like to have you here, and you're a great addition to the show, but it's not in our best interest or your best interest to be here right now. Go home and stay safe and stay away from this terrible virus. That should be WWE's response. So the people that say, well, he's a free man, he can do what he wants, he's a grown man, he can make his own decisions, that is true, and I do respect that. But WWE needs to take the bull by the horns here and just decide, look, it isn't safe. As safe as we're trying to make it now with the masks, the social distancing, the COVID testing all the time, that's great, but it isn't safe for him. And people will say, well, what about AEW and having people like Jim Ross and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard? It's exactly the same. I'd rather them not be there. That we know that 40 people aren't testing positive for COVID-19 though in Daily's place, which is a positive. So you could argue it's maybe more safe to work there. But I'd rather not have them there either. Anyone that's high risk. I don't want to see anyone get sick. I don't want to see anyone have bad health problems because of COVID-19 and because of professional wrestling. It isn't worth it. It isn't worth it. It isn't worth Ric Flair getting sick. This is a TV show that 1.5 million viewers are watching. No one's watching it anyway. So it certainly isn't worth jeopardizing the health of the best wrestler to ever lace up a pair of boots. Of course it isn't. And would this storyline suffer without Ric Flair? No. It wouldn't, because it's not about that. The storyline is about having Randy Orton be the legend killer and build him up for SummerSlam. Does Ric Flair add to it? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. But it isn't a requirement. It isn't something that is a necessity. It isn't like, oh, this feud isn't going to work without Ric Flair. He's he's going to hold this whole thing together. It hinges on Ric Flair's involvement. No, it doesn't. It's a nice addition. That's all it is when it comes to Ric Flair on Monday Night Raw. It's a nice addition. And I think it's looking like Randy Orton is going to turn on Ric Flair very, very soon. We saw last week he gave Ric Flair a bit of a look. I think Ric Flair is soon to have a punt to the head. That's what Randy Orton's been doing to everyone. He punted Edge in the head, of course. He punted Christian. He's going to punt Big Show here. tonight on Raw, I think. And look, he's calling himself the Legend Killer again. They've been showing a retrospective of Randy Orton's career about the legends that he's killed. He's talked about killing off now Edge, killing off Christian. He's going to kill off another legend in the Big Show. And he's got a legend in his corner, regardless of if he's his mentor or not. Randy Orton has been giving Ric Flair some pretty evil looks over the last couple of weeks on Monday Night Raw. So to me, I think Ric Flair's going to get another punt to the head tonight. Not tonight, maybe on Raw, but certainly in the build to SummerSlam. I think that's going to be the next step. And look, it's going to be a great moment. It's going to be a great moment. It's going to be a great bit of television. But is it really required? Is it needed? No. I'd rather Ric Flair be home, healthy and safe, and not have to worry about the Nature Boy possibly getting sick and their family members having to worry about him getting sick again, because he's gone through a lot in the last few years and he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it. The WWE don't need it, and that's just how it is, and that's how I feel about that situation. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Monday Night Raw tonight? Will you be watching Monday Night Raw? What are your predictions for the unsanctioned match between Randy Orton and the Big Show? Do you think Big Show is going to get a punt to the head? Will we see Big Show written off television? Is Ric Flair soon to be written off television? Is Ric Flair eventually going to get a kick to the head by Randy Orton? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to interact with all of you guys down there. I really enjoy chatting and interacting with all of you guys. Anyone's opinions welcome on this channel. That's the great thing about Wrestle News 365. Doesn't matter if you agree with me, disagree with me, like WWE, don't like WWE, don't watch WWE, whatever. We're here just to talk about wrestling and share opinions, and it's a safe space to do so. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and we'll have a chat about Monday Night Raw down there also. Be sure to like this video as well. The more likes we get helps us out massively on this channel to get in people's recommendations. Also, and most importantly, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. I believe we're now over 500 subscribers on this channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for everyone that has subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be doing a lot more live streaming and adding a lot more fun content to the channel. Obviously, it's difficult to do when you haven't met that 1,000 subscriber mark yet, but we're on our way, and thank you to everyone that has subscribed already. The amount of growth we've seen in the last couple of weeks has been amazing to see, so I really do appreciate everyone that's taken the time to subscribe and watches all of these videos. It really does mean a lot to me. Also, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms if you would like. They're on the screen right now. It's at 365Wrestle on Twitter and at WrestleNews365 on Facebook and Instagram, so be sure to give us a follow or a like there. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.